how can we find a way to support each other, and then in addition to that, find a way to get to new markets.
Did you know that the Ford you're driving or the dishwasher you're planning to buy next month might no longer be made in the US? It didn't take a major blow from a foreign competitor. America is weakening its own manufacturing base as more and more major companies quietly move operations north, choosing Canada as their new home. In just the past 18 months, more than $7.2 billion in investment from major players like GM, Ford, Tesla, and Alcoa has quietly flowed into Canada. It's not about cheaper labor, it's about lower total costs. In Canada, industrial electricity runs around 6 to 7 cents per kilowatt hour, about 45% cheaper than in US manufacturing states like Ohio or Michigan. Add to that, the faster approvals getting a factory built in Canada takes months, not years like it often does in the US, especially for industries like clean energy or battery production. One example, Honda is planning a 15 billion Canadian dollars, about 11 billion US dollars, electric vehicle and battery complex in Ontario, backed by major funding from both the Canadian federal and provincial governments. Earlier, Stellantis, which owns Chrysler, secured over 1 billion Canadian dollars for its battery plant in Windsor. So what does that mean for everyday Americans? It's simple. Jobs that might have landed in Michigan or Georgia are now heading to Canada. Each complex like Honda's can mean 3,000 to 4,000 jobs, gone from the US, not just factory jobs, but construction work, parts suppliers, and shipping and logistics roles. If you live in a town that's long relied on industry like Toledo, OH or Flint, MI losing a plant might mean fewer diners staying open, daycares shutting down early, or even local home prices falling because no one's moving in anymore. The US decision to raise steel tariffs to 50% has already triggered a real spike in material costs. Right after President Trump's announcement, hot rolled coil HRC, a core material for many industries, jumped about 6%, or $240 per ton. Aluminum, used in everything from food packaging to cars and electronics, shot past $1,279 per ton, up over 20% since January. For automakers, that's painful. A pickup truck like the Ford F-150 or Chevy Silverado now costs nearly $5,700 more in materials alone without any extra bells or whistles. If you were planning to buy a truck for around $45,000, that price could easily cross $50,000. And it's not because the vehicle got better, it's just the taxes. And it's not just about price tags, it's about jobs. In places like Ohio, Michigan, and Georgia, factories are getting fewer orders because they can't compete with Canada's lower costs. Some Georgia plants have gone from 3 shifts to just 1. And reports show over 3,500 workers have either been furloughed or laid off in just the last 6 months. For the rest of us, it shows up in rising prices on anything that uses metal, from soda cans to fridges to washing machines. That $799 dishwasher you were eyeing. Next month, it might cost $850 to $875, simply because of tariffs and more expensive raw materials. While the US wrestles with rising tariffs and shifting investment, Canada is stepping up fast, becoming North America's new high-tech hub. Provinces like Ontario and Quebec are now being called Battery Valley, with massive projects in EV batteries, clean energy, and electronic components taking root. Swedish firm Northvolt is investing $5.2 billion in a mega battery plant in Quebec, expected to create 3,000 to 6,000 skilled jobs. According to Economic Minister Pierre Fitzgibbon, they're tapping into Canada's low-cost hydroelectric grid and government incentives that include extended tax breaks and easier approval processes for key materials like nickel and lithium. Both crucial for battery manufacturing, Canada's strategy is about more than foreign money. They're building a fully domestic supply chain, from mining and refining to assembly and recycling. That gives them protection from fragile global supply lines and an edge when dealing with carbon regulations from the US and Europe. As companies shift north, skilled American workers, especially in tech, engineering, and battery systems, face fewer opportunities. And the price of American-made goods may keep rising if we end up importing parts from Canada at higher costs. So if you're wondering why job listings in your town are drying up, or why your next microwave is $40 more than the last one, you might just need to look a few hundred miles north.
The other problem is that the United States is starting to export less agricultural commodities, and that is a lot in part due to Mr. Trump's trade policies.
You spend months nurturing your crops, only to wake up one morning and realize your entire harvest suddenly has nowhere to go. Sounds ridiculous. But that's exactly what's happening across the American Midwest. As China unexpectedly cancels billions of dollars worth of American soybean orders, setting off a domino effect that threatens U.S. agriculture in the middle of a shifting global trade landscape. There were harvest seasons when Iowa and Illinois soybeans sailed confidently to China, sustaining farm families and small Midwest towns. But this week, everything changed. China abruptly canceled contracts for 2.4 million tons of U.S. soybeans. A $1.1 billion blow, soybean prices plunged 8.2% overnight. Storage bins are now 13% fuller. With no buyers, I've never seen my harvest just sit here with no idea what comes next, says a 53-year-old Iowa farmer. The region faces $470 million in lost revenue, impacting not just big farms, but also groceries, tuition, and savings for thousands of families. If the situation continues, average income for Midwest soybean households could drop another $1,200 to $1,800 this year, and about 4,500 seasonal jobs may vanish before the next harvest. The question lingers: who will buy the beans that have fed this land for generations? Not long ago, American soybeans were China's top choice, with Midwest shipments part of rural life. Now, after over $11 billion in Chinese-backed investment in Brazil's ports and railways, Brazil has taken over. Chinese buyers now pay $14 to $22 more per ton for reliable, long-term supply from Brazil, which provides 70% of China's soybean imports. For many American farmers, this shift isn't just about lost income, it's about being pushed aside in a changing world. This year, U.S. soybean exports to China may drop by up to 10 million tons, about 20%, forcing over 6,000 family farms to cut production or risk bankruptcy. Soybeans were once the ticket to a secure future. Now they are a question mark hanging over tomorrow. Is America still an agricultural powerhouse, or quietly becoming an outsider at the world's export table? It's not just soybeans under pressure corn. America's golden crop is feeling it too. U.S. corn exports to China have plunged 79% year on year. China also released 1 million more tons from its reserves to cut reliance on U.S. suppliers. For many Midwest farmers, once hopeful fields now bring worry. As corn prices drop and incomes shrink, tough decisions loom about next year's planning and keeping the family farm going. If this trend continues, U.S. corn prices may drop another 10 to 12% in the next 3 months, slashing profits for middle-aged farmers by $900 to $1,500 per household this year. Over 2,000 small farms might suspend operations or cut acreage by 15 to 20% next season. Some changes come quietly by the time you feel them. They're already woven into the fabric of everyday rural life. Every shipload of soybeans now carries more than a harvest. It represents America's global standing. As China and South American partners develop a new trading system, using less dollars and favoring long-term deals, the U.S. role is fading. Without quick investment in infrastructure and modernized supply chains, American farmers could lose their vital spot in the global market. If no major changes happen, U.S. soybean export value may drop another 15 to 20% next year, costing 8,000 to 1,000 jobs in soybean states. Someday we might look back and wonder, was there a time when America's strength was measured by the price of a bushel of soybeans?
We're selling it for like 40% more just because it's cost so much to get, right? And there's less in stock because people aren't buying this.
Imagine you're running a small auto body shop. Overnight, steel costs shoot up 6 to 9%. Parts orders stall, and workers are sent home early. Sounds absurd, right? But that's exactly what's happening in Detroit, where Canada's silent strike on procurement rules is rippling through U.S. automotive supply chains. A Michigan small business owner opens his shop, only to find this week's steel delivery is delayed again. He's heard friends in nearby towns having similar trouble. Why are steel shelves suddenly empty? And why do prices keep rising? Recently, the U.S. placed a 50% tariff on imported steel and aluminum from Canada. Using Section 232, Canada chose not to fight back with tariffs, but instead quietly changed government buying rules and increased environmental requirements, making it harder for U.S. buyers to get Canadian steel. This has left truckers, warehouse workers, and steel plant crews in cities like Detroit with less to do. Some are called in for fewer shifts. Others watch overtime hours disappear as prices inch upward. Families start to worry if everyday costs will soon follow. For those who rely on steady pay, this uncertainty makes planning for monthly bills more challenging, and conversations at dinner tables start to shift toward cost cutting. If this pattern stays over the next 2 months, an estimated 1,500 steelworkers and drivers in the Midwest may face reduced hours or temporary layoffs as factories scramble for supplies. Even small changes in work schedules can quickly add up, putting extra pressure on households and local businesses that depend on these industries to keep moving. Chaos. The summer brings an uneasy quiet to assembly plants, where once machines ran day and night. Now some lines sit idle waiting for steel shipments that do not arrive on schedule. Ford reports a jump of $2.5 billion in added costs just since the start of the year, driven by shortages and delays. Steel and aluminum prices have risen between 6 and 9% in the last few weeks, eating into company profits and slowing production across Michigan. Factory managers are forced to cut back shifts, while some suppliers consider temporary closures to wait out the shortage. For households depending on those jobs, a single missed paycheck can mean tough choices about groceries, medical bills, or summer repairs. If shortages continue for another month, buyers could see the sticker price for new vehicles go up by as much as $400 before fall. The North. Canada is investing $1 billion Canadian dollars to upgrade its steel industry, focusing on electric arc furnaces and stricter environmental standards. The plan is to make steel cleaner and more attractive for markets like the EU. This push for green steel means Canadian exports could soon find new customers abroad, while U.S. producers may face more competition, especially as electric vehicle makers and large infrastructure projects demand lower carbon footprints. For now, U.S. buyers needing green certified steel may have fewer choices and higher costs. In the next 2 months, the price of certified green steel for U.S. construction or auto projects could climb by $45 per ton, adding pressure to project budgets and renovation plans.
Now, according to the U.S. Travel Association, even a 10% drop in Canadian tourists could cost the U.S. more than $2 billion in spending and threaten 140,000 jobs.
You walk into an airport that once buzzed with crowds and excitement. Now, you find rows of empty seats, silent hallways, and closed check-in counters. Sounds dramatic. This is the new reality at America's busiest airports, as airlines and travelers quietly turn away from the United States. There was a time when America's biggest airports bustled, tourists rushing, constant boarding calls, but since early 2025, over 10 major airlines, including Singapore Airlines, Lufthansa, Emirates, Air France, Play airlines have quietly cut flights to the U.S. without major announcements. Now, silence lingers at O'Hare, LAX, and JFK, emptier waiting areas, fewer staff at check-in, and departure boards crowded with canceled routes. In cities like Chicago and New York, the numbers start to feel real. With 85,000 jobs at risk, families are rethinking how to pay the mortgage, keep up with college savings, or cover medical expenses for aging parents. This isn't just about a drop in tourism. It's a wave shaking the foundations of daily life, sometimes leaving the dinner table quieter, and plans for the future more uncertain. With job losses and shrinking incomes, an average family may have to cut $100 from the monthly grocery budget, often buying less fresh meat, milk, or produce. Multiply that by 85,000 workers. And local retailers and food suppliers feel the ripple, making entire cities more cautious. Higher landing fees, complicated visa procedures, and frosty welcomes at border checkpoints have made even the dream of coming to America less certain. These days, even a pricey business class ticket doesn't guarantee easy entry. Every shift cut, every lost dollar, weighs heavier when there are bills to pay and kids asking for new shoes. With fewer hotel guests, staff see their hours cut sometimes by as much as 6 hours per week. That's $240 a month money that once covered groceries, summer camps, or a weekend meal to unwind from the stress. If this continues, hotel and restaurant workers may need to tighten their budgets even further. Shopping for fresh meat, fish, and vegetables might shrink by up to 20%. That's $50 to $100 less per month for every family working in these industries. Not long ago, travelers from Scandinavia, Korea, the UK, and France would visit America touring colleges, attending conferences, or seeking a new kind of summer. Now, They're picking Canada or Japan, which seem more open and welcoming. With everyday essentials, sales expected to drop by $60 million this year. Shop owners face tough choices: cut staff hours, reduce orders, or explain slimmer margins to employees. Shelves aren't empty, but aisles often are, making it hard to plan or invest. As international visitors vanish, local milk sales could drop 15 to 20% from last year. Store owners may lose $1,000 to $2,000 in monthly revenue, affecting fresh product quality and supply, and possibly raising prices if supply chains struggle. In past years, city lights in places like New York or Miami burned bright, thanks to international visitors renting short-term apartments, packing coffee shops, bringing energy to every corner. Now, as British Airways, Lufthansa, and Jetstar all reduce flights, 1.5 million visits simply vanish. Short-term apartment rents in former gateways to America are dropping by an average of $200 per month. For tenants, it sounds like a win. But for landlords who relied on that income to pay debt or cover medical bills, it's nearly $50 million in lost revenue. Quietly, faith in the American dream slips a little more, not just in the eyes of the world, but even for those who once thought they'd finally found stability.
Well, one gets up in the morning and you get up with fear because many of us can leave our house and we probably won't come back.
Changing course for the American food supply. Your local supermarket's bread shelf is suddenly stacked with loaves from Canada and cans of corn stamped product of Brazil. Sounds strange, but that's exactly what's happening across America's heartland. As U.S. farms slow down and shoppers face higher prices and fewer choices. Peon. Empty fields in Nebraska. There was a time when bread was a simple comfort, a warm loaf at dinner, a staple for busy mornings or late snacks. But this year in Nebraska, wheat fields are increasingly left empty, with wheat prices at a 5-year low of $5 per bushel, and exports down $350 million this quarter. Unsold U.S. wheat is piling up. Even Canadian supermarkets now avoid product of U.S., leaving shelves short on basics like bread. For middle-aged families and retirees, each grocery trip brings new worries. Fewer choices, less freshness, and the uneasy sense that bread is slipping out of reach. As more land lies unused, supplies shrink. The facts are stark. Bread and bakery prices are set to rise 15%, adding $30 a month for families trying to keep their kitchens stocked. Even familiar foods can become precious. One policy change can be felt in every slice. Not long ago, California's fields fed millions with fresh greens. Now, a different scene. Produce wilting on the vine and harvest crews gone. Migrant worker visas have dropped 12%. Logistics costs are up 18%. And crops are left to rot. Texas floods and disaster response budget cuts make things worse. For retirees and families, finding vegetables can mean a 30-mile drive for lettuce or tomatoes. Each mile and dollar adds to the frustration. Soon, local produce prices may jump 20%, raising a typical family's weekly grocery bill by $25. That crisp salad now costs more and feels bittersweet, knowing how much is wasted. When American farms slow down, shockwaves ripple through the food chain. Processing plants and storage sites from Idaho to Kansas now run at half speed, and thousands of logistics and packaging workers are losing shifts. At the center is milk, a staple for families each morning. Small diners and markets, pressured by rising costs. Pass increases to customers. Bread and dairy prices have jumped 15%, costing households about $30 more monthly just for milk. Behind each gallon is more than a price. Small food businesses now spend $50 extra a month on logistics and packaging, while families see an extra $5 to $10 weekly on groceries. For many, pouring a glass of milk now feels more careful, more precious. Walk down a supermarket aisle in the Midwest these days and you might spot a quiet change. Canned corn from Brazil, filling in where American brands once stood. As Canada steps up agricultural exports, more than 1,500 containers of U.S. corn and soy have been rejected overseas this year, while Canadian funds are buying up tens of thousands of acres of U.S. farmland. For American families, especially those in their 40s and 50s, this is more than just a label change. The cost of staple foods, like canned corn, is now edging higher. Experts estimate an extra $50 a year just for basics. Not yet, the price isn't the only thing on their minds. There's a growing sense that the story behind their food is shifting, and that the future of the American harvest is suddenly less certain than ever before.
I think fear of border patrol situation is definitely deterring a lot of tourists.
It's not just tourists who've disappeared, so has our revenue. Just weeks into 2025, thousands fewer cars and shoppers are crossing the US-Canada border, and communities from Buffalo to Niagara are feeling the shockwaves. Lost jobs, shrinking sales, and rising costs for families. There was a time when a quick trip over the Peace Bridge was just part of daily life for folks living along the border. But this February and March, more than 35,000 fewer vehicles crossed at Buffalo's Peace Bridge, and nearly 30,000 fewer crossed the Rainbow Bridge. Compared to last year, you don't need a spreadsheet to feel the change. Local diners are quieter, and shopkeepers see fewer faces each week. Erie County's tax revenue is already down 7%, forcing town halls into tough decisions. Cut clinic budgets, delay road repairs, or reduce police overtime. For homeowners and retirees, these aren't just numbers. They mean the library closes early or doctor visits take longer. As funds tighten, families feel it at the register. Groceries and gas rise maybe $10 or $15 more a month. But enough to notice, small businesses quietly let part-time staff go, hoping for a rebound before summer. It's a chain reaction, started by fewer cars on the bridge. Felt right at home. Not long ago, American brands filled Canadian homes, from cereal to kitchen gadgets. Now, with 78% of Canadians vowing to buy local and 59% avoiding US products, a new attitude is emerging. It's more than patriotism, even Amazon feels it, as 41% consider leaving the platform. For middle-aged Americans with Canadian ties, the effects are clear. Returns from Canada are falling. Savings buy less, and shopping habits must adjust. Back home, this means prices for some American staples are up 3 to 5% as brands try to offset Canadian losses. So expect to pay a few dollars more for things like paper towels or coffee. E-commerce firms could see $20 to $30 million less revenue next quarter. Ultimately, it's not just politics, it's a new kind of squeeze at the store. Remember when border towns buzzed with Canadians? And every fast food spot filled up after hockey games or shopping sprees. This year, it's quieter McDonald's. Wendy's and Burger King say they've lost hundreds of millions, mostly from Canadians staying home. For middle-aged managers and franchise owners, empty dining rooms mean tough choices. Many are cutting shifts. Some staff lose hours entirely. Families depending on those paychecks now face new worries. Staffing costs are down 10 to 15%, so each location might cut 3 to 5 jobs just to survive. Losing work at a burger joint isn't headline news, but for those in their 40s and 50s balancing bills and tuition, it's a serious hit. The golden arches remain, but business is far from booming. Canadians have long visited the US for concerts, holidays, and shopping, but this February, travel plunged. Air arrivals fell 13%. Land visits dropped 23%. The impact? Roughly $2 billion lost revenue and 14,000 jobs, mainly in hotels, restaurants, theaters, and campus roles. For tourism workers, it's more than a quarterly figure. It can mean making or missing the mortgage. Businesses report monthly losses of $150 to $200 and are cutting 10 to 15, mostly part-time or seasonal jobs. For families relying on those paychecks, the downturn hits home, showing that when Canadians stay away, U.S. Main Streets feel it, too.
And with President Trump, what he said, he's offended them. I can understand tariffs. I don't really understand them, what's going to happen with all this, but it's got the world kind of going crazy right now.
Milk isn't just milk anymore, it's a luxury. Just days after the U.S. imposed a 35% tariff on Canadian goods, life in border towns like Point Roberts and Darby Line has changed overnight. Simple routines, from grabbing groceries to visiting neighbors, have become fraught with new challenges as tariffs ripple through every breakfast table. Border towns like Point Roberts, WI, and Darby Line, VT, once thrived on easy routines, families and retirees crossing for groceries, especially milk, as casually as attending church. But a new 35% federal tariff on Canadian goods has erased that way of life almost overnight. Local gas stations sit empty. Diners miss Canadian regulars. and clinics are quieter as cross-border visits vanish. In Point Roberts, where 80% of business depends on Canadians, each day brings a tough question. How to survive when regulars are gone? Some shopkeepers now seriously wonder if joining Canada is their only hope. A joke turned real. Milk, once a simple staple, now stands as a symbol. Its price may soon jump $1.5 to $2 a gallon, turning a quick grocery run into a budgeting challenge. For these towns, trade policy now hits home right down to breakfast. There's a certain pride in working at Niagara Falls, New York, a place that once welcomed the world. For many middle-aged locals running restaurants or small hotels, tourism was more than a paycheck. It was a calling. Now, with Canadian flights down nearly 75%, empty dining rooms and silent hotel lobbies are common. Hotels, spas, and casinos have lost tens of millions. Some who managed front desks or kitchens now clean rooms, scraping by on less than the $1,200 average rent. For many couples, dinner talk isn't about dreams but how to pay next month's bills. As visitors vanish, so do jobs. By summer's end, over 800 full-time hospitality jobs could disappear, meaning fewer families can feel secure at home. When guests leave, a piece of the town's spirit goes with them. Insults to Mary, Michigan, border traffic is down 44%. For middle-aged families and retirees, the impact is clear. It shows up in higher prices at hardware stores. Lumber, once brought over regularly, is now rarer and pricier than ever. Local shops and restaurants have lost tens of millions. In Blaine, Washington, retail sales have dropped 30% in 3 weeks, wiping $25 million from the economy. As budgets tighten, schools and farmers markets cut back, and senior services fight to stay open, families start to wonder if it's time to leave. It's more than just lumber. When those prices rise, repairs, decks, and roofs all cost more, without change. The average household could pay $400 extra each month for groceries and supplies, a hit hard to handle for any family, especially those on fixed incomes. A question of trust and belonging. In places like Darby Line and Point Roberts, the border crisis is more than lost business. It's losing a sense of home. Neighbors who once celebrated together and shared meals are now separated, with border crossings from Canada down 23% from last year, leaving a deep ache. For many middle-aged locals, it's not just fewer customers or a quieter Main Street. It's about identity and belonging in a place that felt like ours. Distant federal decisions are eroding routines that once felt solid. If this continues, over 2,000 families may leave towns they helped build, giving up not just homes, but a whole way of life. The question remains, when community ties fray, what does it mean to be at home?